For this presentation, I chose three sources from the Project Muse database, which deal with the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. My first source is a book written by Stephen Dyson in 2015 titled Leaders in Conflict, Bush and Rumsfeld in Iraq. In his book, Dyson examines the different beliefs and leadership styles of these two men and demonstrate the impact these differences had on the course of the Iraq War. According to the author, Bush was prepared to pay a high cost in American lives, money, and prestige in order to win. Rumsfeld favored turning the war over to the Iraqis and was comfortable with the risk that Iraq would disintegrate into chaos, which it did. It was only after Bush fired Rumsfeld in late 2006 did he bring U.S. strategy in line and with his own goals, sending additional troops to Iraq and committing to continued U.S. involvement. The book is not fully critical of Rumsfeld, as the author credits his leadership abilities as the Secretary of State had close interaction with General Tommy Franks. Franks took the Secretary's incessant questioning as a positive cue. Together they planned an invasion that was daring in conception and achieved its goals with stunning speed and at a low cost. The author notes that Rumsfeld's insistent questioning of Franks was confined to the invasion plan and that he asked very few questions about post-war planning. Dyson argues that the operation would have benefited greatly from an in-depth probe of assumptions and contingencies about the aftermath. Rumsfeld, however, did not believe the U.S. should be involved in Iraqi affairs after the overthrow of Saddam. President Bush, by contrast, did believe that the U.S. should shape a democratic post-Saddam Iraq. My second source is a book titled Architects of Delusion, Europe, America, and the Iraq War, written by Simon Serfady in 2011. In his book, Serfady presents a historical analysis of how and why the decision to invade Iraq was endorsed by some of America's main European allies, most notably Great Britain, and opposed by others such as France and Germany. The author argues that George W. Bush, Tony Blair, Jacques Chirac, and Gerhard Schroeder were the architects of one of the most serious crises in post-war transatlantic relations. Serfady states that these four heads of states were the victims not only of their personal delusions, but also of those of the nations they led. He contends that not one of these four leaders was entirely right or entirely wrong in his approach to the others or to the issues before and during the war. Serfady concludes that for the resulting wounds to heal, the United States and France must end their estrangement. France and Britain must resolve their differences. Germany must carry its weight relative to both France and Britain. And the United States must exert the same visionary leadership for the 21st century that it showed during its rise to dominance in the 20th century. My third source is a book written by multiple authors and edited in 2005 by Thomas Cushman, titled A Matter of Principle, Humanitarian Arguments for War in Iraq. The authors argue that the war in Iraq has been morally justifiable on the grounds that Saddam Hussein was a brutal tyrant, a flagrant violator of human rights, a force of global instability and terror, and a threat to world peace. It is important to note that this book was written during the peak of the insurgency and a year before the surge. The authors discussed the limitations of the current system of global governance, which, according to them, tolerates gross violations of human rights and has failed to prevent genocide in places such as Bosnia and Rwanda. They also emphasized the need for reform in international institutions and international law. At the same time, these essays do not necessarily attempt to apologize for the mistakes, errors, and deceptions in the way the Bush administration has handled the war.